Hi, I'm Nick Westergaard from Brand Driven Social, and I'm very, very fortunate today to be joined by DJ Waldow, founder and CEO of Waldow Social, formerly of Blue Sky Factory and Bronto, author of the upcoming book Rebel's Guide to Email Marketing, and speaker at this fall's Social Brand Forum here at the Iowa River Landing. And I'm very excited to have him live and in person from a Starbucks. Where are you, DJ?
I'm in Orinda, California, and at a Starbucks, as you said. And as you can see, it's beautiful and sunny out, is why I'm wearing my new Oakland A's baseball cap with a nice shadow over my face. But it's either that or record this from my in-laws' house, which means kids running around and dogs barking and cats jumping on my lap. So I thought this was the next best option.
That is understandable, and we talk about the convergence of branding and social media here, and you already got two brands in with the A's and the Starbucks pass by there. So
Exactly. There's an affiliate code on here somewhere. I can't.
I was going to say, yeah, you should be
somewhere.
should be getting credit for that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit here about email and your event, of course, and such. So, yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, email. I mean, that's one of the you're one of my favorite evangelists on the topic of email. It's probably the new media that, as a marketer, I was first exposed to. So it's one that I think is. I always call it the old new media. And I feel like, you talk in the introduction to the book about the Wall Street Journal. There seems to be an article every so often declaring its death, and
Yep.
yet it still soldiers on.
Yeah. In fact, there was an article in the New York Times, a blog in the New York Times, which talked again about email and its decline and all this. And, it's interesting. Just like anything else, I mean, it depends which study you read, which report you look at, and you have to always look at the credibility and the sources there. But another report. In fact, I unfortunately wasn't able to get it into the book because with books, manuscript is due well before months
Right.
before it's actually published. But there was a great study that came out recently by the folks at Exact Target. They do a series called Subscribers, Fans, and Followers. I think this was their 14th report. And in that report, they talk about email, and they talk about email. I usually think about email as there's email on a personal level, so you and I emailing back and forth, and then there's email marketing, which is, obviously the brand or one to many is what I would call it. And in this Exact Target study, they show that people use email at least every day, like 91%. When you start to talk more than once, several times a week, it's like 97%. So that shouldn't be surprising, but that's the one-to-one. But when you look at the email marketing, one of the questions asked is, what's the preferred channel for marketing communications? Email is 77%. I mean, not even close. I think the next closest was social or maybe text messaging, and it's like, don't quote me on this, but it's like in the 20s or something. I mean, it's really not even close.
Well, that's the thing. When people, are writing the email is dead story. I mean, I think that, like all things, just like, when cable TV arrived and the network's audiences were distributed, I think maybe some of the, the early numbers on email just really solidly owning that may indeed be waning. But when you look at numbers like that, it's still being the preferred channel. And the other point, in the book that you guys, you and Jason Falls, co-author of the book, kind of lay out there, is that I believe the number is at $40.56.
Yeah, so that's the ROI. So that's the $40.56 is the return on every dollar spent in email, and that's but an interesting stat on that too is that's certainly declining. I mean, it used to be 45 and then 42, and now it's 40, and it's projected to be 38 or so in 2000, as they go back and look at 2012. But that number is still twice as much as the next. So is it declining? If you look at ROI, overall or ROI, you can make that argument. But, I mean, you know how this works, Nick. It's like anything else. You want to look at overall numbers. You want to look at averages. Well, averages are that reason are called averages for a reason. There's people on either side of the average. If you're doing email marketing and nobody's engaging with you, you're probably at it something south of $40. If you're a big brand who's killing it and knocking it out of the park, you're $40. I mean, I've got a client right now who's every time they hit send on an email, they're paying $40,000 a year for an email service provider. Every time they hit send, they make 10 grand. I mean, what's the return on that? After a week, they're even.
I know. I mean, and that's the thing. I feel like you can kind of, navel gaze on the overall trend of the ROI number going down. But if you look at it alone and compared to other channels, I mean, it's still that's a great example of it too. It's still an impressive ROI for any channel today.
I'm pretty sure you just said navel gazing, which maybe it's just my immaturity, but it always makes me giggle a little bit.
I know, and it's always a metaphor I'm afraid to use because I'm afraid to get it wrong. Like what's the it's all sorts of things could go bad with that one.
Any other word for navel, and I think it starts to become inappropriate.
I know. It's just that was my risqueness for the for the talk. Now, in speaking of other channels, one of my favorite presentations of yours that's out there in various slide decks and ebooks across the web is you talking about email and social media, kind of the Batman and Robin. Speaking of metaphors there.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me. I think there's a lot of opportunity to use those two channels together, and I call it Batman and Robin. In fact, a good friend of mine and colleague, somebody you know as well, Jay Baer, calls it the Madonna and Lady Gaga, which I think in some ways, looking back, is probably a little bit of a better metaphor. But the idea is that Batman's just been around forever. It's like
right.
the thing, he can save the city on his own. He's been there. He's done that. Robin is kind of at the time, more the new and up and coming and, dare I say, sexy of the two. It depends on which Batman and Robin you're watching.
I was going to say, yeah.
but and I think the two channels can definitely play well together. There's what I call social promoting, which means that you can use email to promote your social channels, and you see that a lot more lately. It's kind of the where people are slapping up those Facebook and Twitter icons and Google Plus and Instagram and Pinterest. You see those in emails. You also see them on billboards, and you see them on magazine covers. And I don't know, I'm sure in Starbucks here somewhere there's an icon floating around. So that's using email to get people to grow to sort of grow your social following. Mm-hmm. But there's also so that's what I would call social connecting. There's also social sharing, which I think is the one that people don't leverage enough. That's what social sharing means is you get an email and you get an option in that email to click a button, right. And with one or two clicks you share it automatically. You share either a block of content from that email or you share the entire email with your social network. So you can instantly share it on Facebook and Twitter. And what that does, it expands the reach of your message. So let's say your list is 1,000 people, and let's say on average, 200 people or 20% of your list is opening that. Well, if one person shares that with their network, and their network has 10,000 Twitter followers, and even 1% of those people click on the link, I can't do the math on that, but you've expanded your reach. I was trying to do easy numbers. But you've expanded your reach now by that much more. That many people are looking at your email that would not have been looking at it before. A huge opportunity, I think, and it's just one I don't see leveraged enough. I mean, we talk in the book about some examples of how people are doing it well, but I think it's a huge opportunity.
Well, and there was some poll that one of the email service providers did, and again another number I can't quote, but reinforcing that's of who which marketers were at least taking the very basic and elementary step even of sharing their emails. The email content on their social platforms as well. That would kind of be the reverse of that.
That's the third one that I would call more social promoting.
Right.
What I mean by that is actually where you, the marketer, as you're sending out that email, Chris Penn does this a lot. Every time he sends an email out, he'll update his social networks and say, hey, just shipped the newsletter, check it out, and a link to it. So it's similar to social sharing. The difference is you're taking your network and you're using social media to tell people about the email, or
Right.
asking them to opt in or something.
Right.
It's all along the same lines for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the dynamic going the other way, I suppose. So tell us a bit about the book, kind of the backstory on it, and the elevator pitch.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The book is all about breaking the rules, and I think what has happened. It's when I started in email marketing about 8 years ago. I was that guy who said, "You must do this. You have to do this. You can never use free in the subject line. You can never rent a list or purchase a list or any of these, all these like extremes. You have
Right.
subject lines have to be a certain number of characters long." And the reality is, or the best day to send is Tuesday. Never send on a Sunday. Never send it. All these things that you hear, and I found as I matured, both as an individual, as I got older, and also in business, I realized that it doesn't work that way. If you live in this world of absolutes, the reason it's the best, so basically what happens is it's Tuesday's the best day to send. You hear this in webinars all the time.
Right.
Data shows that Tuesday at 3 p.m. is the best day to send an email. Well, guess what? If everybody sends an email Tuesday at 3 p.m., it no longer becomes the best time of day to send. In fact, just today, Chris Penn wrote a blog post on What Counts that talks about this very thing. I mean, they look at their numbers, and Tuesday there's a huge spike. Well, try sending a different. So the whole idea of the book is to taking those air quote rules of email marketing and flipping them on their head and saying, you know what, try something different. Here's an example of somebody who used a subject line that instead of 20 characters or 35 was 140, and it worked. Or here's somebody who used, we talk in the book about King Arthur Flowers, one of my favorite examples, and they use free in all caps in the subject line all the time, and they've tested that, and for them and their audience, while they had fewer opens on an email that had free in the subject line versus something that was, maybe more cutesy.
Mm-hmm.
So they had fewer opens, but they had more conversions. The sales were like 4 times as much in the free shipping one, the one with the subject line free shipping, and really, especially if you're in in B2C world or B2B for that matter, that's what matters. It's sales, it's conversion. So, and their thought behind this, you can never know for certain why that happened unless you do like a full study, but. Their thought was, well, the people that opened that email that said free shipping, they had an intent to buy.
Right.
They weren't opening to see the great picture of this, I don't know, whatever, lemon roll or whatever it was, but they opened it with the intent to buy. Therefore, their conversions were higher. So for them, it worked.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I know that you talked on the Social Pros podcast too about one of the big rule breakers out there successfully, because they do it very well, are the political campaigns. And I know you and I have exchanged tweets about different subject lines. I remember the one that was just "Hey," and
Yeah.
or the one you pointed out with no subject line at all.
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting thing about that. I want to be very careful. I'm not stressing that your subject line should be "Hey" or you
Right.
should have no subject line. What we try to talk about in the book, Jason and I, is that you have to test it for your audience. Best practices are ultimately practices that are best for your audience. You talk about this a lot on your blog too. I mean, it's not just, you can't say blanketly that this is what you should do. You can offer advice for what works for most people but I guess I feel like we're at the point where case studies are great. I went to business school at North Carolina, and they did this. They teach business schools like by the case study method, which a lot of business schools are. And you see this case study about Southwest, for example. It's nothing to do with email marketing, but just marketing in general. And you see Southwest, you're like, wow, this is how it's done. This is how it's done. Well, why isn't everybody like Southwest then? Because you can't get everything right. That works for Southwest's audience.
It's a bigger part about who they are as an organization, and there's so many other outliers that it's not just grabbing this one kind of tactic, whether it's a subject line or whatever, and say, oh, now that we'll do that, we'll be like Southwest. It's what
and here's what happens too when it starts to come to open rates and conversions in email. What matters more than anything ultimately is who it's from, the from name,
yes,
and the subject line, and that combination. So I'll give you a great example. If I now read your blog every day, And when I get that email saying you've got a fresh blog post, I could care less what the title is. I recognize your name. I trust that the value is going to be there. I open it and I read it. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, I give you multiple examples of other companies that I feel, and you, I'm sure you have those examples too, where you get an email from somebody and you say, can't wait to open it.
Yes.
You could care less if they say, Nick is an idiot is the subject line. Well, you'd probably open it just to see what it is. But, so it really depends on your audience.
That's true. That makes me think of, it was a couple weeks ago, your co-author, Jason Falls, who again is one of those names that in the inbox I'll open, but he had a subject line, and it was for one of his kind of email newsletters, and I think it was something wrong with your blog, or there's a problem. And again, it was very effective because I was like, oh no, and
I thought that it's so funny you say that. I got the same email, and obviously Jason's my co-author, and we're good friends and all. And I thought the same thing. I was like, what's wrong with my blog?
Exactly. I thought something was broken and urgent message.
But another example. Speaking of that, you wrote a blog post the other day about why your business blog sucks. And of course, there's a truck going by right now, so apologies for that. But you wrote, that was I know that wasn't in an email, that was a blog post title, but it's the same thing. It worked for me because I'm more your audience.
Right.
My mom would look at that and say, "What's a blog?" but she's probably not your audience.
Exactly. Well, it's all about finding that fit. As we wrap up too, want to talk about that. I am very excited about having you here in Iowa this fall, and to share a lot of what you've talked about, a lot of the book content. And I should mention also the shill being, if you're among the first 100 to register, you get a free copy of the book. So
Woo!
Exactly. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Exactly. Ann Handley will be there, good friend and also author.
Yes.
And Matt Collier will be there. Also, just wrote a book about rock stars. And also good friend, and you just, I mean, it really, I am excited. As you and I joked about, I went to school at Michigan, and the last time I was in the state of Iowa was when Jess Settles was playing basketball. And if those of you that are Hawkeye fans, you may remember Jess Settles. He played at Iowa for I think 8 years.
That sounds about right.
A medical red shirt, and this and that. But no, I'm excited to be there. I mean, I really am looking forward to this event and being on stage with that crew. And I think this is really going to be an exciting, a new type of event as well.
Well, that's great, and we're still working on all the paperwork to get a Wolverine actually in the state. Whether that's that's going to merit a sheriff's escort in and out of town. We don't know, but we're still looking into that.
Well, you've got the information about the helicopter and stuff that I request.
It's all in the rider, so we're still
and then obviously this should be waiting for me when I get there.
Absolutely,
right?
Actually,
another branding opportunity.
Exactly. I think there's one actually in the hotel that the event's at, so you're not far from it. Another fun fact about all of this was I first met you, Ann, and Mac all at the Marketing Profs Digital Mixer in Chicago. I just thought of this the other day. What was that?
Years ago.
Yeah.
At least 2 years ago, right?
At least. I think it might have been like 08, 09.
The marketing, that's, I know we're wrapping up, but the Marketing Profs is one of those events. I'm actually speaking at it in Boston again in October, and that's one of those events. I think that event, Jason Keith's Social Fresh event, hopefully your event will also be this soon too. But I think those are all events that they're like those connectors. Like I look back to those different events. I think Jason Falls' events becoming that too, his Explore events.
Right.
Where you say, I can't remember where I met that person, and you can point to one of those three, and you can say, that's where it was. So I'm hoping that the Iowa event is also going to be in that category shortly.
And that's what I'm hoping for too. And that's kind of really the size of event I want to build too, with a couple hundred where you have a nice it's a nice size that it's still full, well attended, lots of excitement, but that kind of access to the speakers too, where it's easy for people to talk and network
Yeah.
and uh, and all of that. I should mention also that we'll both be at Jason's Explore Minneapolis event in August as well.
Yep, for sure. Another Big Ten school area.
I know
So
we're
like
hitting them all. We're
them
just
all.
we're putting a tour together. We just
Yeah.
need to get an Ohio thing going.
I mean, I can't actually name anybody that's ever played on the Minnesota basketball team, but that's another story.
It's
I
hard
guess.
to beat Jess Settles, but
Hey, this is fun though. Thanks for doing this.
absolutely. And thanks for talking. And for folks that don't know, they can find you online on most social networks at DJ Waldow.
Yep, with a W on the end.
Ah, good.
Where's Waldo with a W?
Good distinction. Spell check always wants to stop that.
Yes.
And of course, your blog and your business at waldosocial.com.
That's correct. And actually, that one you can have a typo in it, and it also redirects.
Ah, now
Hey.
there's a little trick of the trade.
Exactly.
But again, I hope to know we'll see DJ and hope to see all of you watching, as many of you as possible this fall at the Social Brand Forum. You can learn more about that at socialbrandforum.com. So thanks again, DJ, and we'll all talk soon.
Thank you. See ya.